The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Head to Cut.com, that's KUTT.com, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play their fantasy pick'em for a chance to win 100 times your money in NBA, MLB, NHL, college basketball, and more. Sign up today using the promo code SGPN to get a 100% deposit match. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently late Thursday night, roughly 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode. We have 8 matches to preview in the quarterfinals in Estoril and in Marrakech. Decided to punt on the Houston coverage for now because there's still matches going on. So because of that, I didn't want to wait for some lines to come out. So we are going to skip Houston for now, and maybe we'll get back to it later in the week. But for the sake of this episode, we have 8 matches, lines in all of them. Should be fun. Clay season is officially in swing, and hopefully the matches continue to be entertaining. Before we get into the actual quarterfinal picks, though, I do want to remind everybody to check out the either podcast on Spotify or YouTube if you want to actually potentially switch your, I'd say, method of consuming the podcast. And a reminder, if you are watching it on YouTube, you can still like and subscribe. If you are watching it or listening to it on Spotify or Apple, you can rate and review. A reminder also to check out the merch store if you want to support the Tennis Gambling Podcast on the SGPN website, because we have shirts, we have mugs, a lot of good merch for the show. So you can always find high-quality merchandise on the SGPN merch store, not just for our show, but also for a bunch of other podcasts with the network. And speaking of other podcasts with the network, wanted to remind everybody that there are a bunch of other shows, 20-plus shows focusing on gambling with SGPN, and they are all free to listen to. And this week's featured show is going to be the MLB Gambling Podcast. Baseball's back, and so is the MLB crew with their free daily picks. I'm actually on that show, so if you want to listen to me break down some baseball, I'm on a couple times a week. But if you aren't subscribed to the MLB Gambling Podcast, you should. What are you waiting for? Anyway, time to start off with the recap of the last episode, starting off with the actual lock and dog picks. Unfortunately, not good. For the lock, ended up losing with Coria on the money line at minus 115, as we had him beating Dzanchulp. Weird matchup because it ended up being a pretty delayed match based on bad weather in Estoril, and Coria ended up losing the first set. He ended up winning the second set, and then got absolutely destroyed in the third set. So he ended up going the distance, but he really no-showed the final set, so picked up a loss there. For the dog, picked up a loss on Varius to win in straight sets against Momo at plus 125. Unfortunately for us, I might have underestimated just how little Houston clay resembles actual clay. And Mo actually looked pretty good, as you ended up seeing Variz lose in straight sets. Wasn't really that close. It was one of those bets that you kind of make a couple days in advance, and as it gets closer and closer to starting, you realize you didn't exactly like the angle as much as you did a couple days ago. That was kind of what was happening as I was actually watching Houston and looking at the actual results themselves. It did seem like the overall clay was not, I don't want to say legitimate clay, but you get my point. A lot of non-clay players looked very sharp because of the speed of the courts. And because of that, that was kind of a miscalculation on my part. Apologies there, but picked up a loss there as well. So to get into the actual recap of the matches and the overall takeaways of the event so far, starting off with the actual matches from yesterday, Team did win a match and then unfortunately did lose to Gasquet in straight sets. So he ended up winning a marathon in the first round, and then he lost again. What else is new? As Team refuses to make a deep run in an event at this stage in his career. Hurkacz ended up winning. Not an easy match, but he ended up winning that one in straight sets. He ended up seeing Borges upset Musetti. Now, that's kind of unfortunate for us because we had Musetti to win the event at about 10-1. He had double break point, I believe, to win the first set. Failed those, then ended up losing the first set in a breaker, and then went down a break early into the second set and lost. So Musetti, disappointing showing there. Borges has looked very sharp in front of the home crowd fans, especially after losing the first set via bagel to Puy in the first round. Garin beat Fees in 3 sets. Garin looks like he's back in pretty good form, which is good to see after he's been struggling for the last year or so. Fees, though, continues to be a mess in 2024, and he loses again pretty early in a tournament. Martinez beat Batista Agut. Batista Agut looked great in the first round as he beat defending a runner-up, I believe, in Kekmanovic, and you ended up seeing him lose immediately in straight sets to fellow countryman Martinez. You had Ruud, who killed the Zandschulp 6-1, 6-2. That's good for us because we have Ruud to actually win the event. The match of the day was probably Fucsovics taking on Monfils, as Fucsovics did lose the first set 6-1, then came back to win the second set 6-1, and then won the final set 7-5. As for Marrakech, ended up seeing Baena continue his title defense as he beat Evans in straight sets. Moreno, the American, made a good performance in the first round, beating Diaz Acosta, which sucks for us because, once again, that's another outright that we had that went right down the drain. But he ended up beating Goffin in the second round in straight sets. Besides that, though, one of our outrights that is still alive is Navone, who ended up beating Wawrinka. Wawrinka absolutely destroyed Ramos Vinolas in the first round, and Navone did get the job done as a slight underdog in the second round, 25-1. So knock on wood, we do have a long shot who made it to the quarters, and hopefully he can make it beyond that, because Vukic ended up upsetting Offner in 3 sets, courtesy of 2 very competitive breakers. He won 7-6 with a 13-11 score in the first set, lost the second set 6-2, and then won the third set 7-6 with a 9-7 scoreline in the final set tiebreak, and he also was able to fight off a match point in that said breaker. So either way, point is Navone is actually a decent path to make some noise moving forward, and hopefully he can cash that 25-1 rogue line that we got on Bet 365 at the time. But anyway, Navone is actually going to be favored against Vukic. I'll get into that matchup in a second. To get into Houston quickly, though, just going through some takeaways. Shelton had a war against Bergs, but he got the job done. You ended up seeing Shapo lose pretty early in the event itself. Echeverria looks good. Tiafoe won a war against Duckworth in 3. And you see Kovacevic up a set right now and a break against Thompson. But Thompson does have break point, so I'll see what happens. And Mo actually was able to beat Purcell in the second round as well. So point is, decent amount of interesting matchups on clay. And it does seem like some players are taking some time to adjust. Others are not. As for outrights, kind of hit or miss, as you ended up seeing Diaz Acosta lose in Marrakech in his first matchup. We ended up seeing Musetti lose in Estoril in his first round matchup. But on the bright side, we do at least still have Navone at 25-1, and we do still have Ruud in Estoril. So hopefully he can keep it rolling. Either way, though, that's going to do it for the actual recap of yesterday's matches. Now it's time to get into the actual preview of the quarterfinal matches on Thursday. So we're going to start off in Marrakech. It actually really doesn't matter which one we start off with because both of them start at the same time. So looking at the actual matches in chronological order, the first match will be a fun one between Sonego and Berrettini, as Berrettini's around -175 on the money line. Sonego's around +155. If you want to find the spread, you can get Berrettini at -2.5 at -105. You can get Sonego +2.5 at -115. As to the over-under, 23 games, the over is -102, the under is -118. For the set wagering, Berrettini in straight sets is +135. Sonego to win a set is -165. Over 2.5 sets is +150. Now, Berrettini's look good so far in this event. I was questioning why he was such a short price to win the event. He was one of the favorites, and he has looked as good as advertised. Now, I have to at least point out he had a bit of a struggle against Munar, which is understandable because Berrettini hasn't exactly played much clay tennis recently, and he was able to get the job done in 3. Munar, we know, is a clay specialist, so that's still a good win nonetheless. Killed Shevchenko 6-2, 6-1 in the first round. Sonego, though, has been struggling a bit recently based on form, and he was able to win in Marrakech in his first round against Nagal. Now, he did lose the first set 6-1, but he did come from behind and win that one in 3. As for the head-to-head, Berrettini has been pretty good against Sonego in their careers. They faced off 4 times. Berrettini is 3-1, but 3 of those 4 meetings were on grass, and the other meeting was on hard court in Phoenix back in 2019. So 0 career meetings on clay. So you can kind of toss out the actual head-to-head, but I do think Berrettini is the better player right now. Sonego's had a really rough 2024, and even though Berrettini has had injury issues, I do think his game has translated well to the fast clay courts in Marrakech, and I do think his serve will be the story, the serve and the forehand. I think he'll be able to dominate the actual pace of play, and I do think Sonego, even though he has talent and he does have the mobility to extend some rallies, I'm concerned with the shot selection, and we know Sonego can get into his own head. I think Berrettini is going to be too solid offensively, too aggressive, and I think he'll be able to push Sonego around the court. And we know Sonego, if things go poorly, can kind of self-destruct, and I do think Berrettini's going to capitalize on that. So give me Berrettini to get the job done. I'll lean to the -2.5 games. I think he'll win this one, potentially in straight sets, but I think he'll get the job done while covering this 2.5 spread. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Moreno taking on Baena. Baena, the defending champion, is -187 on the money line. Moreno is +162. The spread is the same as Berrettini, as it's -2.5 for the favorite, and it is +2.5 for the underdog. As for the over-under in games, 22.5, the over is -106, the under is -114. For set wagering, Baena to win in straight sets is +135, Moreno to win a set is -165, over 2.5 sets is +140. Now, Baena has been in good form in this event, which is kind of interesting how some players just have tournaments that they thrive in, and it really does not matter what their current form is before or after, because Baena was having a really rough 2024, and he was able to show up in Marrakech and look like his old self again, because he beat Gigante in a set and a half as Gigante retired due to injury, and then he beat Evans in straight sets with a tiebreaker in the match on Thursday. As for Moreno, he killed her outright with Diaz Acosta as he won that one in 3 sets. Did go through qualifying, though, as he beat Kuzmanov in 3, and he beat Barrere in straight sets with 2 breakers. Then after beating Diaz Acosta, he beat Goffin comfortably. Moreno's kind of nice. I think he's a good player. Now, do I think he's good enough to beat Baena? Maybe, but I think it's going to be a close match. I think that even though Baena is going to get automatically a lot of, I'd say, support because he is the former champion, and former champions tend to do well crowd-wise in matchups where you do not have a home country guy. Moreno, I think, is a good player, and with him beating Diaz Acosta, he impressed me. I think he's got some talent. I think that he is definitely a pretty solid clay player that's flying under the radar, and I do think he can keep this match interesting. I'm not saying Baena is going to lose, but I do think this match should be close. I'm going to link to the over. I see value on the 3 sets, actually, at +140. Baena in 3 might be tempting, but I do think at the end of the day, Moreno can kind of keep Baena off balance at various portions of this match, and I do think that should result in a competitive battle. So give me the over 2.5 sets in that one. Slightly into the dog, but nothing strong, because I can see a world where Baena does win a set comfortably, and it still goes 3, which might completely destroy the spread in the grand scheme of things for the dog. So give me the over 2.5 sets, my main play there at +140. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Kotov taking on Fognini. That's right, Fognini did make it up to this point. Kotov is the favorite at -146. You have Fognini at +126 for the actual spread. Kotov -2, and you have Fognini at +2. Over-under for games is set at 22. The over and under are both at -110. As for the set wagering, you can find Kotov to win in straight sets at +170. Fognini to win in straight sets at +275. Over 2.5 sets is +130. Now, to go through the actual path of both players, Fognini was definitely not expected to make it this far, as he was able to beat one of the tournament favorites here, as he was able to upset De Geer in 3 sets. So kind of a shocking upset there. Fognini, we know, is a very solid clay player, or he was back in his prime, but we know he's well past his prime at this point. But he was able to get through qualifying, beating Borg, beating Miedler, beating Gaston in 3, and beating De Geer in 3. As for his opponent, Kotov's been good, ended up beating Benchetrit in the first round in straight sets, and beat Kaboli in straight sets with a breaker there in the second. I think for this one, I got to lean to the over. I think Fognini's crafty enough to make this match interesting, and he has been a 3-set magnet, 6 straight matches for Fognini that have gone to deciding sets. And I do think that Kotov, despite being a solid player, can be a little bit, I'd say, erratic at times, and I do think that Fognini's overall variety with the drop shots, with the consistency with the actual ground strokes, can make life difficult for Kotov in these longer rallies. Both guys are not exactly great servers. I think Kotov's a better server than Fognini, but he's definitely not a world beater when it comes to serving. Give me some breaks in this match. I see a lot of back and forth flows to this matchup, but I am going to lean to the over based on value. I think +130 with a guy that's gone to a deciding set in 6 straight matches is a good value play. Give me the over 2.5 sets there at +130. Moving on to the last matchup, you have Vukic taking on Navone, and Navone is around -180. Vukic is around plus 155. Navone on the spread is minus 2.5, and Vukic is plus 2.5. Over-run for games is set at 22.5. I have Navone winning probably in straight sets, but I'm going to lean to the game spread here. Vukic has never been known for being a good clay court player, and it was kind of shocking. He was able to beat Offner, but even with him beating Offner, he still lost the actual game spread by 2 because he won both breakers and lost the one set 6-2. I can see Navone winning a set in blowout fashion. I think that even though Vukic won yesterday, he was in a marathon. Fatigue could be an issue. And Navone, we saw make the final of a 500 on clay a couple months ago in Rio. I think he's in line for a good showing here. There's a reason why we picked him to win the event at 25-1. And I do think that this matchup is pretty favorable for him. So I'm going to lean to Navone to get the job done here. And I'm going to lean to the spread here at minus 2.5 games. Now, moving on to Estoril. Going chronological order here, the first match will be between Llamas Ruiz and Hurkacz, as Hurkacz is the favorite by no surprise. And you're going to look at the actual line here, massive favorite, or to no surprise, I mean. Hurkacz is minus 341. Llamas Ruiz is plus 271. As for the actual game spread, Hurkacz minus 3.5 is minus 117. Llamas Ruiz plus 3.5 is minus 103. Over-under in games is set at 22.5. Slight juice to the over. For set wagering, Hurkacz in straight sets is a minus 105. Llamas Ruiz to win a set is minus 125. And the over-under for sets is 2.5. The over is plus 145. Now, Hurkacz looked fine in his first matchup here. I know he's not exactly a clay court specialist by any means, but he's okay on clay, nothing special, but still got the job done in the first round. Llamas Ruiz, though, went through qualifying, and he coasted, as he has not dropped a set yet. Went through 2 rounds of qualifying, beat Kempfer in straight sets, and ended up beating a relative unknown in Jorda Sanchez, 7-6, 6-4 in the match on Thursday. So the point is, I do think Llamas Ruiz being a clay specialist can make life interesting for Hurkacz. But for the actual spread, you can get 4 games plus 4 for Llamas Ruiz at minus 145. I like it. I'm not laying this with Hurkacz on clay against the guy that has not dropped a set yet, including qualifying. I think Hurkacz can struggle with the movement on clay, and I do think that Llamas Ruiz, who seems very comfortable as a clay specialist, can really make life difficult for Hurkacz here. So I am going to lean to Llamas Ruiz. He might be live to win this. I'm not going to pick him to win it, though. Instead, I'm going to play it safe and go with the game spread instead. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Borges, the home country guy, taking on Garin. Borges is a pretty decent favorite at minus 170. Garin is plus 150. As for the actual game spread, Borges minus 2.5, and Garin is plus 2.5. Over-under for games is set at 22. Slight juice to the over. As for the set wagering, Borges in straight sets is plus 150. Garin to win a set is minus 180. Garin in straight sets is plus 325. Over 2.5 sets is plus 140. Now, Borges, once again, was really bad in his first set against Puy, as he lost via bagel. And now he admitted after the match his nerves got to him in front of the home country fans, and then he was able to settle in after that. But he's been good. Beat Puy 7-6, 6-3 in the final 2 sets, and beat Musetti. Big win there. Nice underdog price in straight sets, 7-6, 6-3. Garin's been good. Beat Rodionov in straight sets. Weird match there because the match got delayed about a day midway through when Garin was about 1 or 2 games away from winning the match. So they had to finish that one, and then he ended up beating Fees in 3 sets. Fees a good win on paper. I don't know what to make of it because he's been a mess this season. So good win, but I have to at least point out Fees is kind of an overrated win based on his current slump in 2024. As for the matchup itself, I really can't go against Borges. The crowd support's been phenomenal, and he's definitely used it to his advantage as he was able to dominate the back half of that match against Musetti. I do think that Garin can make it interesting, but he has not been consistent for a year at this point, Garin, and I think that looking at this overall matchup, I am going to lean to Borges. I think it might be close, maybe 3 sets, but I do think that Borges will use the crowd to his advantage. And I do think he'll eventually get the job done en route to a win. I'll probably lean to the game spread here at 2.5. I'm not going to bet it, though. Instead, I would lean to Borges' money line at maybe a minus 170 parlay piece. Moving on to the next match, you have an interesting one between 2 veterans. You have Martinez taking on Gasquet. Now, Martinez is a decent favorite, about minus 200, and Gasquet is around plus 170. As for the actual spread, Martinez minus 3 is even money. Gasquet plus 3 is minus 120. Over-under set at 22, slight juice of the over. For the set wagering, Martinez in straight sets is plus 140. Gasquet to win a set is minus 170. Over 2.5 sets is plus 130. Now, Gasquet was a lucky loser in the event, as he ended up losing in qualifying to the likes of Puy. But then he came back and he beat Team in straight sets. So the point is Gasquet has looked fine so far in this event, and you're looking at Martinez. He's been good. He ended up beating Altmaier, good win there, good clay player in straight sets, and beat Agut, who was looking really sharp in his first round match against Kekmanovic. Now, Kekmanovic has had a really bad 2024 as well, but still a good win against the defending runner-up, I believe, or I think he was defending runner-up, if I'm not mistaken. So the point is, it was a good performance from Martinez in the second round, and we'll see how he looks in the third. But I do think that Martinez is simply put in much better form than Gasquet. He was able to win a clay challenger in Girona in his home country leading into Estoril, so he's in great form on clay. Gasquet, I do have questions about the overall fitness with his age, and if it turns into a longer match, if his body will hold up. I have my doubts, but for this one, I think I have to lean to Martinez, probably in straight sets. When you win a clay challenger and you're able to parlay that into two very good performances against good clay court players in Estoril, I have to assume you're a level above your opponent here. Good win by Gasquet, beating Team. You know my thoughts on Team, though. At this stage in his career, he's definitely damaged goods. That's a name that's worth a lot more on paper than it is in reality. So I do think that even though Gasquet got the job done in the last match, kudos to him. Still lucky to be here, losing in qualifying, and I do think that Martinez will get the job done in this one in a relatively comfortable fashion. And the last match of the episode we're going to talk about is between Ruud and Fucsovics. Ruud is a massive favorite, about minus 365, and Fucsovics is around plus 295. Ruud for the spread is minus 4. Fucsovics is plus 4. Over-under set at 21.5, juice to the over. And as for the set wagering, Ruud minus 1.5 sets is minus 125. Fucsovics to win a set is minus 105. Over 2.5 sets is plus 165. Now, Fucsovics is, we know, a pretty good player. I've never really known him as being a good clay player, but he's looked good so far here. Beat Kachin, who's been a disaster for about I'd say several months at this point, dating back to 2023. Kachin can't even win matches at this point, so good win, but I have to at least acknowledge Kachin is a lost cause right now, and he beat Munfi in a war. As for Ruud, we know that he thrives on the clay 250s, and damn, he thrived on Thursday, because he killed the Zandschulp, 6-1, 6-2. Simply put, I think Ruud's going to kill him. I think that even though Fucsovics is a solid player, fitness has been a concern with regard to injury for his career. He's off of a 3-set marathon, and I do think that Ruud is easily the best player in this field. Ruud is phenomenal, and I do think that he's in line for a good showing here. Ruud is the defending champion, so I know that he can definitely handle the courts in Estoril. Should have some crowd support there. Maybe you'll get a competitive match there, but I do think that you're looking at Ruud, simply put, just being so much better than Fucsovics on clay, and I think it's a pretty generous price of minus 125. I'm going to go with the favorite here to get the job done in straight sets at minus 125. Now, that's going to wrap it up for the actual preview of the 8 matches for the quarters on Friday in Marrakech and in Estoril. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks, but before we continue that, do want to take a quick word from our sponsor. We're also brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's U.S.-based and available in 40 states. Peer-to-peer social betting is a new and better way to bet directly against your friends or other users on sports, politics, pop culture, and other events with verifiable outcomes, plus a ton of social features to give it the feel of a betting social network. Cut offers lower vig and fully customizable odds so you can create your own bets. Cut handles the payment side of things, so you never have to worry about chasing down your money. Social features include group chats, betting leaderboards, head-to-head history, user profiles, fan groups, and more. And they also have great rewards. Get cash back every single time you bet against your friends or other users. So download Cut today in the App Store or over at cut.com. That's K-U-T-T, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the place to play fantasy sports because it is the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. They have great pick'em games. For example, you can pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total into their upcoming games. You can win up to 100 times your money in a single night. Pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. And you can also make rivals picks, which pits 2 players against each other, so you can pick which player you think might have more points, for example, in an NBA game. But a reminder that you should also join Underdog Fantasy because they have a lot of very fun markets for
tennis. They have, for example, breaks of serve. They have aces. They have a lot of fun tennis options to make matches more interesting, and I recommend you joining the platform in order to take advantage of those opportunities. So sign up today with promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Visit NordicFantasy.com or find them on the App Store, and don't forget to register with the promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Must be 18 plus and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the 8 quarterfinal matches on Friday in Estoril and in Marrakech. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. Starting off with the lock, I actually am going to go back to the last match we talked about in Estoril. I am going to go with Ruud to win in straight sets at -125. Simply put, Ruud is so much better than Fucsovics on clay, and I think that it's going to be a pretty one-sided affair. Ruud only dropped 3 games. I thought the Zandschulp was good against Coria. We know that Coria is a very solid clay player, a clay specialist, and the Zandschulp was able to use his overall, I'd say, firepower to kind of push Coria around. Ruud wasn't having it. Ruud was unloading the forehand. The serve looked good. He played almost a perfect match, and we know he's defending champion. So the fact that he started his title defense in such a dominating fashion tells me that he is a force to be reckoning with, or to be reckoning with. He has had a really, he just has really been a solid clay player his entire career. We know he's made the French Open final a couple of times, and I do think at the end of the day, you're looking at Ruud being in much better form on clay. Fucsovics maybe can win 4 games in a set, but I really don't see much more than that. Fatigue could be an issue as well, since he had a war against Monfils yesterday, or I should say on Thursday. I think that Ruud's in a line to win comfortably. If I had to guess, 6-3, 6-2, something like that. I see a very, very one-sided matchup. But you're going to give me I'd say a top 4 clay player in the world against Fucsovics, and he's defending champion here, and it's -125 to win in straight sets. It's just a very cheap line. I'll take advantage of it. Give me Ruud to win in straight sets at -125 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to stick with a bit of, you know what? No, I think I'm going to change my mind here. I think I'm going to go to Marrakech, actually. Thought about maybe going with Playa Martinez, but I think I'm going to pass on that. Instead, I'm going to go with a matchup between Fognini and Kotov. And for this one, I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets at +130. Simply put, Fognini's been an absolute 3-set magnet. 6 straight matches, including qualifying, going to 3 sets. So he has been involved in a marathon after marathon after marathon. And apparently Fognini has not gotten tired yet, which is a good sign. But Fognini, including qualifying, has played 4 matches here. All 4 went to a final set, and Kotov's been in good form, but I know that he can be streaky at times, and I do think that Fognini, with the variety and the familiarity on clay, can take a set off Kotov. Now, I think that looking at the overall price, +130, I think is a pretty favorable number, especially when one guy has been involved in a bunch of upset victories and a bunch of long matches. Beating De Gier, who is one of the favorites, is a very good win for Fognini, who you can argue looks washed half the time, and the other half he looks completely fine. Apparently he's fine now. So we're going to back that current form of Fognini to some degree. I think he wins a set. I think Kotov wins a set. Give me the over 2.5 sets at +130 as my dog. So once again, the picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Ruud to dominate and to win in straight sets against Fucsovics at -125. And for the dog, I'm going to go with Fognini and Kotov over 2.5 sets at +130. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. A reminder, next episode, we'll back for the semifinals in Estoril and in Marrakech. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the MLB show, the NBA show, the NFL show. You get the point. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.